welcome to the Environment Select Committee on Monday, the 24th of November 2025. We'll just wait for Jackie to close the door. We're not broadcasting this evening because the equipment's broken, but we are recording. The recording should be available online to watch at a later stage. As with all Council Select Committees, we will start by remembering those of our friends and neighbours who died in the Grenfell Tower fire in 2017, and we'll start with 72 seconds silence to remember them. Yes, thank you very much indeed. We've had apologies for absence from Councillor Bakhtiar a few days ago and from Councillor Verboven this evening. We've popped out of his office, so we record those. Everybody else is here. Does anybody have any interest to declare? Okay, and the minutes of the last meeting have been circulated. Does anybody have any comments on those, or are you content that I sign them through that?
Only the spelling mistake that we discussed earlier.
So subject to the spelling mistake, which I think the officers know about. You called that forward to the minutes. There you go. Now to Tommy. So we have two items on the agenda tonight in this the most important meeting in a way of the year. The budget is the first one, and perhaps I can invite the league member and the officers up to talk about the environment and neighbourhood budget, please. Thank you. So, John, would you like to introduce the report, please, and the officers as well?
Yeah, I can introduce it. Obviously, this covers all of the environment and neighbourhoods. So some of it outside of my kind of direct remit, but we've got officers here who can speak to that. I think the overall picture that is really important to land is just what a difficult financial position. Just what a difficult financial position we're in. The government funding reforms have changed the financial context in which we operate. It's disappointing we don't have any opposition members here tonight to speak for their government's plans. But nevertheless, we have tried to be prudent and to put together a set of budget proposals that protect our core services. So from our perspective, things like the twice-weekly bin collections, clean streets, amazing spaces, some of the things that we know our residents really value are protected, which is great. There are big savings here, but we're always mindful that it's our residents who experience our services, and so we need to minimise the impacts on them and try to protect the things that people really care about. Hopefully, this strikes a good balance.
Thank you, Johnny. I would next be turning to Bo, who's the Executive Director, to also talk through your reports on the budget. Maybe as he's collecting himself, I'll get you to speak for a bit longer, Johnny. I'm going to filibuster for a bit. No, Bo's ready.
Really contribution being late. I'm gone at the moment, and you've seen more box that there's been an issue that we're kind of working through at the moment. So the majority of the really clear there's some quite significant financial impacts. They're well publicised. So the current funding challenge means the town has cut its budget quite significantly. We've had really list members wherever possible with a reduced impact on frontline services. So we've looked to provide additional income where possible without impacting too much. We tried to keep those in line with inflation and not very much above that. There are some areas where we already had overachievement income. So parking's done really well the last couple of years. And there are some areas where, for example, in the leisure contract, that through changing the methodology we use, we're able to get additional income from the contractor. We have had a council-wide VR process. Again, members are really clear with us that we're going to impact frontline services. So as part of that, each member who applied for VR, they were asked how their post could be covered without impact on the services. There will be some impact on kind of back office stuff, maybe policy work, potentially service development work. But the VR applications we've taken and accepted are not ones that will impact on the services residents receive. So wherever possible, we've tried to maintain kind of service delivery at the quality that you currently see. What's really positive is that there have been some investment in services. I believe other councillors want to invest in street cleansing. So we're investing in street cleansing across the borough, which is quite positive, and we're going to make sure we get some outcomes from there. And the other area is around kind of additional bin crew as well. And that's to take account of demographic growth as well. So all in all, what's a really challenging position, we've sought to secure frontline service as much as possible. The savings are in the paper, and happy to take any questions on them.
Thank you very much. But I'll just see if any of the other officers want to contribute anything, Andrew, more around. Okay, well, we'll have some questions from the committee. Shall I go around to my left and Sam?
Sure. I usually ask this every year. Are there charges which we have not reached the maximum we can charge, but that don't affect the majority of people? So I'm thinking of charges that hit some form of profitable businesses, where we think that we're particularly out of line with similar councils. As in, are there revenue gaps that we know are there, which don't affect lots of our ordinary residents?
So a lot of this, Brahim is a really bizarre competitive finance actually went for advice, but the areas that we don't charge for are things we've chosen not to charge for policy decisions. Areas that we could explore and we'll look at in future, things that we don't do like food licensing here. So Westminster license budgeting brands, for example. We don't do that here. That's always been our position that we consider whether going forward we would look at that. There was an opportunity to look at commercial income from advertising in the public realm. That wasn't something that we really explored a lot previously, whereas we are looking at that more. You'll see bus shelter advertising in here. We're going to raise additional £400,000 from that. In terms of kind of areas where we don't really charge, they're much smaller services. So we do kind of a bit of private work. So looking at things like the tree removal on private buildings, the cleaning of private streets and areas like that. But it wouldn't generate massive income. And there are areas where we could make more income, for example, in parking, but we don't want to penalise our residents in that way. So the only area where we've increased charges above inflation or above the amount allowed for in law is on visitor permits, and that's in line with what other boroughs are doing as well. So we're not looking to kind of penalise our residents.
I've got a follow up, which I think officers may have seen the questions in the past. I don't know how you work out what the gap could be if revenues that are not being collected by routine things like suspensions and hoarding licenses and others, where developers are taking up council space. And I've got one. I know it's not a case, but I think it's looked at it, where for a number of years I've been being told that the council doesn't have a system for knowing when licenses are expiring, and I've been told, oh, someone's got an Excel or someone's got a new system being developed. But as the budget continues to get tighter year after year, these areas where we have been very, very relaxed, feels that there is cumulatively revenue gap there to collect. So is there someone who's tasked with, in your sort of departments, looking through for either revenues that are not being effectively collected because licenses aren't being renewed and picked up, or things which won't affect day-to-day people, individuals, but that other councils are levying charges for and we're not, and keeping an eye whether the decisions are made or not, keeping an eye on the pot size. So if someone turns to you and says we need 500,000 or we need 1 million more, you say, well, actually, I've been doing this research. This is what we can do. Like, and just one example of it, I know probably being worked on, but I've been saying it for 8 years, is motorbike bay charging. And I say this as a motorcyclist, is that I think it's always coming. I've done calculations about what the gap is on it. Maybe there's a reason that it's not being done, but we're central London. I see motorbike bays fill up in the day and then they empty out at night because visitors coming in for free parking.
I'll let Andrew talk about motorcycle bay in particular. But you're absolutely right. There are areas where people don't necessarily have licensing at licenses, and they try and get away with it. So a good example is kind of skip licenses, unlit skips. Talked about boarding earlier. Even people parking in rental space without kind of having the right to do that. The street enforcement team in general, they're responsible for those kind of issues. We also have unlicensed street trading. So there's quite a number of areas where we will provide licenses. We should be monitoring to ensure people aren't operating without a license or operating illegally. Not always, but in the main, they stick with the street enforcement team. And the street enforcement team and Kingdom, they do proactive patrols, as do our kind of NSR, our parking contractor. So I think having suspended base, for example, when they're doing building works.
I know I'm going to get in trouble, but I do have one quick, which is, do Kingdom provide a service which tells you how much other councils are making out of something and what people do more?
No, but we do. So Andrew will go into. I'll let him answer. But we do do a lot of peer kind of group networking.
Mm-hmm.
The finance team as well have access to the information on income from all other boroughs. And there are areas that the policy systems we've chosen not to implement. But like I said, there are substantial areas of our licensed activity that people choose not to comply with or not to apply for licenses to try and avoid that cost. And in the main, regulatory services, the street enforcement team, and those kind of areas, it's their responsibility to do proactive monitoring, to respond to allegations from the public, to do intelligence-led monitoring to resolve that. We do prosecute and fine people. We have a housing and HMO licensing scheme as well. And obviously people need to register, people don't. So part of the team's role is to do that. There's a way on that, Andrew?
Just a little bit extra on that. So you're right, we use paper-based systems and Excel about unlicensed. We're applying a product to be cloud-based, so that someone on the street will know live whether or not that skip has got a permit. So we are moving into that. It's costing a lot of money. That's why we didn't do it, because we didn't think there was enough money in it. We now think it will pay for itself. So that we're in the process of buying that at the moment, and that will pick up things like parking suspensions, vertical parking suspensions, as in the company should have paid a parking suspension, they didn't, and so we will operate against that now. At the moment, we tell them to buy a license. Now we will fine them for not having it. So that's a difference. Motorcycle parking, it's a policy. If the council wants to charge motorcycle parking, it can. It's a policy, whether for visitor parking or for visitor parking.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, where is your highest pressure? Because we're having a lot of we're talking a lot about money not going enough, not going far enough. So where is the highest pressure, and how are you looking to mitigate?
So in terms of pressure, if you look at our outturn for the year, in environment neighbourhoods, we're delivering well above budget. So it's not a case of trying to massively contain expenditure. There are areas of the service we operate where we know we could reduce our costs for improved behaviour. So a good example is street cleansing. So we want the best streets in London, part of that about is putting in really well-resourced teams that go out and clean the streets, but it's also about stopping people from dropping litter. So that creates pressure. And we have enforcement contractors, Kingdom, and our own staff who have to do that. Another one is recycling. So we think that if people recycled 1% more, then for every 1% we could save between 70 and £100,000, just because recycling is so much cheaper, or food waste is to dispose of than your normal refuse. But in terms of pressure, I'm really pleased to report that at the moment our budgets are doing well. However, the council has got a wider pressure, as you know, on budgets of kind of, it ranges from 80 million and upwards. So in an environment, we're being asked to do our fair share. And we know that a lot of the council expenditure goes on the people who most need it in terms of adult social services, children's social services, temporary accommodation. So we're being asked to do our bit to contribute to that savings target. So colleagues internally aren't saying to me, Bo, you need to cut here or you need to cut there. They're saying, what could you reduce? What are the things that you can stop spending on that wouldn't impact at the moment on service delivery, where you can contribute towards the council's overall challenge? Probably not your direct response to your question, but at the moment our budgets are doing really well. But that's not to say that next year of more savings again, we'll be asked to take savings out of the area that we suggest. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. There are like modest pressures in parts of the directorate, but there are no kind of major pressures that are a challenge in terms of this directorate's budget. Effectively, our challenge is to be a really good corporate player and to help the council as a whole meet the budget challenge. And Bo's right, the big things are TA and social care. So where we are able to help other departments with some of their costs, that's really positive. And so the challenge for us is what service do we want to deliver? How can we make sure we are delivering that? And if we're able to do it, how can we be leaner, be more efficient in terms of how we deliver it as well? And if we're going through that process constantly, there are always going to be things that we can do in terms of savings and bearing down on costs. There's always a kind of competitive element to benchmarking your service and benchmarking your fees as well. But I don't think there's a kind of directorate level budget pressure that's keeping me up at night. The one that keeps me up at night is the corporate challenge.
There is a number of underspend. My question is, why do we have underspend? And does having underspend affect our overall budget in a sense that will we be penalized going forward for not spending all the money because this government and stuff?
We wouldn't be penalised, I think.
No. So in terms of our underspends, when you set our budget at the start of the year and it's based on our headcount and who we think needs to deliver the service as is. We have some underspends around recruitment. The reality is it takes a little while to recruit people, and we build in a bit of a vacancy factor, which means that when we don't recruit or it takes more than 3 months or someone's worked their notices time, we get savings there. We also have a corporate challenge panel and regular panel on recruiting people. So the council is telling me at the moment that our services, if you can hold a vacancy, it won't impact on service delivery. Can you do that to try and help out the overall council pressure? A lot of the areas where you see a positive figure is we're overachieving on income. And a lot of those areas, such as the commercial waste fund, for example, or parking, next year they're being offered up as a continued savings target. So next year the target will go up to meet that ongoing, and that will have the council budget overall. But no, most of our underspends are in areas that we've chosen to try and restrict hiring of people or doing stuff to help the council overall. And because of that, it means the council's overall budget is at the moment forecast to come in at 0. So even now, we're looking to make further prudent decisions to support the wider council position. But again, I'll go back to the point that Marinda said to us, at the moment the steer is you don't want to impact on service delivery. But where we can do that, delay things slightly, stop recruiting to that post, not do that piece of work this month or wait 2 months, then we'll continue to do that to try and support the wider council. In terms of will it impact those going on, that's probably a conversation with finance. But at the moment, the overall council is forecasting a balanced budget. I think if we were coming in massively underspent as a council, then that might be a conversation that our finance team would have potentially, but at the moment that is where we are.
Also, I've got two more questions, sorry. One is, there is where somewhere where you, staff travel card is restricted to 750. My question is generally, which staffs get travel cards? Is it once explained?
So I'm not the expert in this one. That's the corporate saving that's being taken. So my understanding, and I mean I'm willing to be correct on this, is that one of the council's benefits, it's not a terms and condition, but benefits, is that staff get his own 1 to 2 travel card, as paid for the equivalent for the days to come into the office. But that isn't a terms and condition, that's just a benefit. And that was put in place some time ago because people kept either we needed to pull cars for people in the council or pull vehicles, or we were continually kind of refunding people for journeys undertaking their day to day. Unfortunately, because of where the council is, that benefit's been withdrawn. So any staff member can apply for that zone 1 to 2 travel card. That's going to cease. It looks like if this budget is agreed from the 1st of April next year. So staff will no longer get that. That benefit won't be provided, and then they'll need to, when they do any journeys, they'll need to pay for them. I mean, our borough is very small.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but there are some people who can get around in different ways. And also with the move to a bit more flexible working, that has reduced a little bit as well. But again, I know police and other services see that as a benefit for recruitment and retention, but that is something that unfortunately the council is going to cease.
That's why my question is, because I understand a lot of people are working from home and working. My final question, Chair, thank you. On fees and charges, it says the 4.6.1, due to the high level of domestic inflation, leadership thought to increase fees and charges by 5%. So is this an increase because you need an increase, or is it an increase because you can increase?
So the council, we get set with a standardised rate. So in the council's medium-term financial plan for the next 4 years, as part of budgeting, the council assumes a rate of inflation. So a lot of our services are contracted out. We buy a lot of equipment, and also staff get a cost of living increase based on inflation. So that 5% is an accumulation of the cost of service delivery going up. So where we provide services such as commercial waste, it's costing us broadly 5% extra to collect that waste in staff costs, the cost of bags, the cost of petrol in the vehicles. And that's the same with our contract. So we give that money to Suez, or it could be in the parks, Ida Verde who do it, or it could be our parking contractor. They're also paying for their staff uniform and all of those things. So we generally base that on the rate of inflation, and 5% has been determined corporately as the rate that should be applied. That doesn't mean we always apply 5%. So where we can demonstrate a significant rise, or we think, as Councillor Macklem said earlier, that the amount that we charge isn't in line with our neighbouring boroughs, then we do provide slight increases, or in fact decreases if we're not competitive. Something where there's a market for it. But that 5% is broadly to reflect assumed or actual inflation in contracts and service delivery.
Okay, thank you.
Is that right, Ray? Thanks. Well, Victoria. Yeah, thanks. My first question is more general, more, I suppose, overall council related, but perhaps between you and Councillor Felicitas, you could comment on page 17 and 2.2, and then I'll just bring them all together, the three. On the same page, 2.8, paragraph 2.8, talking about budget deficit gap. Excuse me. Just stick to those two. It says 82 million, and then it says 76.5 million. Is that the total for the year? 4 years, sorry, the period we're talking about, or is that it's going to reach that figure in the final year of the period? So I still haven't understood.
So we believe that our budget, on the 30th, well, the budget for this year, as of kind of the end of the 31st of March, that by the end of the 4-year period, our available budget spent on services will be £82 million less.
So that's for the final year.
Well, it will accumulate over the 4-year period. So if you took now, in 4 years' time, the amount that we're spending on services will be £82 million lower.
Right.
And that's not split evenly per year.
I know, I understand.
Do you know roughly, Raheem, the drop over each year?
So it's well 23 million in 26, 27. And yeah, and then rising up to 82.
Yeah. So, but at the end
The
of that,
4 years, it's the 82 million
It's cumulative.
yeah,
Dorian.
cumulative.
Right. So, and then the on 2.8, the 76.5 means if savings are put forward, that'll be the contribution to reducing the gap.
So what number was that on?
Paragraph 2.8.
So what's happened there is that 5.4 million. So my understanding, Raheem will correct me if I'm wrong.
So I understand.
Next year, we believe the impact on our budget is to be 23.5 million. But that's not confirmed yet. That'll be confirmed in advance of the budget statement. But it's going to be there or thereabouts, 23.5 million. So internally, officers and councillors and leadership team, we've been trying to work out how we close that £23.5 million gap. And again, we're trying to do that without impact on the services. At the moment, we've still got to find £5.4 million of savings of that 23.5 million to close the gap. At the moment, we've got a £5.4 million gap to fill next year of that 23. And that could slightly change following the budget statement.
Yeah.
But as it stands, between now and the when the budget is posted, we need to find the further £5 million worth of savings. I know for a fact there's about £3 million of flexible areas we can look at, but they're not agreed, they're not consulted on solutions. So that's that £5 million gap.
And the
So
76, so the 76.5 is over the 4 years.
Yes, because you're taking away the 23.5 less the 5.4.
Okay.
So of the 82 million over the 4-year gap, and we found that we've still got 76.5 million pounds to find. But in terms of next year alone,
Yeah.
we've still got 5.4 million pound gap to find.
Understood.
Sorry, that's really complicated. Is that right, really?
That's correct.
Thanks. So moving on to departmental stuff. Page 19, 332 and 352. This is about parking, the parking service and the revenues. Sorry, income. This is the revenue that's greater than budgeted. Which is great. The question really is, what are examples of projects or things we can spend on that we can use? Because obviously there are legal limits as to what you can do with any profits from parking.
Yes.
So some examples, aside from paying parking attendants, but what sort of thing can one spend the money on?
So and I'll let
Sort of
Andrew
far away from,
or
further away from
respond
parking.
in detail, but broadly we can spend it obviously on the parking service itself, concessionary fares, people in the borough,
Oh, right.
and then there's other highways services, works and improvements, so street lighting service or road maintenance, those kind of things, and then there's a wider application of it to environmental improvements. So at the moment we pay for our street cleansing service, our parks service as well. And it also covers elements of our waste service that improve the environment, so recycling of food waste and collection and disposal. Is that right, Breen? Is there any other areas you think we should come in? Bit of the enforcement team,
Yes,
the
yes.
environmental work.
So street enforcement, parks, police, there's a lot we do pay for it. 4 million will go into a reserve, which can be spent on those defined. There's a wide range of allowable spend, but there are boundaries, there are guardrails, but you can't go beyond.
I was aware of that. So I was looking for example, very good. But I was looking for examples of where you can go which are not so obvious. They're not paying. It could be, well, parking service itself, of course. But as you said, but that's interesting. Okay.
So we did reach a point a couple of years ago where we sought to charge more things to parking, not by raising people's fees, because that was not controlled by us, the parking tickets. And that's why we started to include recycling and food waste, and that supported the council. If we hadn't have done that, then you wouldn't be able to offset the overspend in other areas. And it's worth saying as well that we can also charge the overheads related to the staff who do those functions to the parking charge as well. So, for example, proportion of IT services or finance services or the call centre, those staff that are directly engaged in those activities can be recharged to the parking account as well. But we continue to reach that point. If we were to receive more income than we could legally spend, that goes into reserve, as Andrew said, and that reserve would be spent on capital works on the highway. And we know there's often works to do with talking about streetlight improvements and those kind of things.
Okay, thanks. So now, on the next page, 334. I'm a bit confused. It says leisure management contract is a favourable position of £260,000, but the leisure centres themselves are costing more. So how is that reconciled?
So we had the traditional in our leisure contracts, they sort of GLL, where we've got 2 leisure centres. We had a traditional contract where they deliver services on our behalf. And those services, because they're a sole paid service, were subject to VAT. So a lot of councils, and we took legal advice and we took advice from specialist consultants, they've moved to an agency model. So we're no longer buying services from those companies. They are agents and they're providing services on our behalf. So by taking advantage of the agency model, we've been able to make a on paper saving, a real saving of £260,000, which means that while the cost of service delivery is the same, we're saving on the VAT, and it's something we're able to offer up as a saving that doesn't impact on service delivery. It's quite a new concept, but most boroughs are moving to it now. We just happen to be ahead of the curve, and we were looking for ways to save money. It is a VAT exemption, so
Okay,
legal, but
that's obviously greater than the increasing cost of running these centres. Okay, I think I'm getting to the end.
Also, people's fees and charges have slightly gone up to cover inflation, we said before. So,
Sorry, page 24. Yes, on 4.55, I was interested in, in the street lighting, where, not so much what's written in detail here, but the fact is that the current street lighting, the new lamps are very bright white. They're not as harsh as the old-fashioned, whatever they were, these gas things. I can't remember what they were called. But the predecessors, and I can see both in where I live, the predecessors had this very nice rosy tint, which wasn't so harsh. There you go. That's exactly. Thank you very much. That's the great term. So I'm just wondering, do we have to have these harsh white lights?
So the lights we've got are warm, and so the LED lighting is what's called warm LED lighting. So other boroughs have blue LED lighting. We don't. So we decided 4 years ago to put warm LED. So that is now what all our lighting will be in 3 years' time, other than in conservation areas where we have specialist lighting.
But they're still bright white, aren't they?
It is bright white.
It's nothing we
That's
can.
as warm as it gets.
It's as
It's
warm,
as warm
that's
as it gets.
so that's exactly, it's as warm as it gets. There is a spectrum of one to 7 in warm, and we're going for 7. We're going for the warmest.
That's called
white.
warm, is it? So
Yeah.
That's because the older ones are not as bright. I mean, they don't appear to be as bright.
you get more light bleed, they take more energy to run. So we believe we can save 44% on energy costs by going for LED. And the other thing as well is quite simply is because so many boroughs have gone to LED, we find it hard to get the parts and the bulbs and things. So it's becoming more and more challenged to maintain the non-LED lighting stock. Sorry.
Interesting. Just one last thing with the cost, the relative cost of, I mean, you said running costs drop, but what are you saying? People, let's say the rosy ones, they're not LEDs.
So So our non-LED lighting is the most efficient electrical lighting that's not LED. So years ago we bought the best lamps, and they use about 47% more than LED. So our energy saving is less than other boroughs because our existing lighting is very efficient, and we've gone for the warmer LED, which is less efficient than the blue LED. So the warmer LED use more power than the blue LED.
And what about the cost of these bulbs lamps, sorry, I think the correct word is lamps.
That's right,
New
lamps.
lamps compared to the previous rosy ones, are they same price or cheaper maybe?
So what's happening is exactly as Bo said, the old suppliers are costing more in relation. The new LED lamps are coming down, and they're on parity now. So and that's why we can accelerate, because the wasted cost of throwing a perfectly good lamp away is less significant. We decided years ago, if it's working, keep it up, and in 2 years' time we throw it away. And now we're saying it's worth it. On the cost of electricity means that the weight, even though it's still waste, financially it's now in our benefit.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Laura.
Yeah, hi guys. I have a couple of things. I'm going to start with Cornwall Walk. So it says it's 100k. Was that for everything, absolutely everything, including, is that including repairs, landscape, and all the associated, absolutely everything, final cost, no extra cost at all if something goes wrong?
So the Cremorne Wharf, it's been funded from still the actual capital cost of it.
Yeah.
I couldn't give you the figure now. I think it's at 1.4 million. The figure you see in here is for maintenance, but because we can't plant anything there because it's got to be fully demountable, it costs significantly more. Standard part to maintain because it's all containerized. It needs like continual watering, and all those kind of additional expenses you wouldn't see. So that's the cost of not just the watering, but also the staff to do the work as well. So that is an estimate for routine maintenance. If there was to be an act of vandalism or a significant issue there, then there would be additional cost. But that's what the team estimate it will cost to provide the additional staffing and the maintenance on an annual basis. I think it might cover a little bit more staff with Cremorne Park as well on gardens.
Okay, and then BCN charges, they're quite high for something. I can't remember. I don't have the figures. There's somewhere in there. I'm in here, so I can find it. But do you know if it affects certain groups more than others? And if so, how can we do it? So if it's a lower income
This for
group,
parking charges.
yeah.
So we can't set. Andrew, do you want to advise on that?
Yes, so parking charges, PCNs are set by government,
Okay.
and so we have no discretion about whether, and it applies equally. There's no discount. No one gets a discount for BCN.
And then also, I noticed you in the film, there was something about film. There's a shortfall of like 85 grand, but then you go on to say next year is going to be 175, and then the year after 350,000. How is it going to be if we've already got a shortfall? How is it going to increase?
I think we've reached into the contract. I think more of the point
Yes,
answer.
I can answer that. So the shortfall is for filming events.
Yeah.
The increase is museums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I just wanted to check that. You asked me another question. Fine. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Well, thanks very much for the paper again, and you've done a remarkable job considering you're the good guys as a department, as an executive director, in producing an income. There's nothing that's keeping Johnny awake at night, which is far from the case when he was lead member of the finance in terms of the overall position, and to the fact that you've been able to produce some four really quite substantial growth proposals, I think is really impressive, particularly in areas of focus for all residents of the borough and the clean streets and waste and recycling. So I do commend you as a director for bringing those forward, and I wish them success as you get through the budget cycle. But as you alluded to earlier, Johnny, being the good corporate player,
Yeah.
we've got a significant problem coming down the tracks and £5.4 million gap to close now corporately. To what extent have you as a department considered stopping doing some activities altogether, particularly non-statutory ones, in order to help close that gap at this stage?
I would say we have considered it, and it may be that those are things that we end up doing, or rather not doing. We have to have really difficult conversations. I think in 4 years' time, if fair funding is in the place that the government have indicated it will be, this council will have to do less. And actually, there's a case for doing less anyway, just in terms of what would a lean, efficient state do that is there for people who need it and gets out of the way of people who want to get on. So striking that balance. So I think the answer is that there are things that we've considered stopping doing. This draft set of budget proposals, generally speaking, doesn't mean we would stop doing a huge amount, because we are trying to minimise the impact in terms of frontline. But we will need to see, and it may be that there are things we have to stop doing over the coming months and years, and we need to be honest about that.
So to what extent is that perhaps a debate for next year and the year after or beyond, rather than the coming year for this budget?
I think it's probably. I don't want to answer in an absolute way because we don't yet know the final outcome of the fair funding consultation. I think broadly in this directorate it's probably a next year conversation. But I think next year we will have to stop doing some things in this directorate and not just in this directorate. If the reforms are as they appear to be, I think hopefully this year we can protect the front line and make sure through kind of really good budget management we can still deliver the things that we're currently doing. But the need isn't static either. So we shouldn't preserve services as an aspect. But there are some services that were incredibly valuable in the past that are less so now. And there are other things that we wouldn't have conceived of doing 5 or 10 or 20 years ago that now are really important. So I don't think it's a case of being afraid of that change, that there will have to be change and transformation of both the services that we offer and how we deliver them. And I think we have to be really up for that as a group of councillors, and our officers need to be as well. That's the challenge that we're setting in terms of transformation. And I think if you look at some of those figures in terms of an £80+ million cumulative gap, that necessitates change. And sometimes, necessity is the author of invention. So we have to, with that spirit, go forward.
Thank you. Just picking up on the lighting question, I know we've spent a lot of time on that, but it is an example of a spend to save initiative. I mean, have you got any others in mind that be spending to save?
Yeah, I think that if I wanted to do our digital offer, could really open up some avenues for saving both directly within our service, but maybe also in areas like customer services. So we should have a really well functioning app. Residents should be able to report things in the public realm. It should go direct to the person who's going to fix it, and it should be fixed and resident updated. At the moment, we have a lot of customer contact that goes back and forward, and people spend time directly interacting with it. It is not efficient.
I think there have been previous examples of spend save as well. If you look at things like Oracle, that we invest quite heavily in, but will help us deliver savings over the coming years. You look at Resident Connect in the first phase of that. There are, as there often are, some problems in the early stages of implementation, but over time that should enable us to deliver a better service that meets people on its own terms. Because in 2025, you don't want to be coming into a customer service centre, you want to be able to do it on your phone, and that will also realise savings in the future. And I think going forward, lots more examples in that digital space, like Bo was talking about, but also, and you touched on slightly sort of more environmental example with the LEDs. I think the hope and the intention would be that the more we do in terms of reducing emissions and retrofitting buildings, over time that should also realise revenue savings for the operation of buildings. Obviously, there's a capital upfront cost, but 5-10 years down the line, we should hopefully be in a place where that's costing us less and delivering a better service. And actually, that's what it's about. It's about the service we deliver to residents. So it's looking for spend to saves that, of course, help us meet the budget challenge, but also deliver outcomes for local people.
Very much. So, final area of questioning I had, looking at savings proposals overall and past achievement of savings proposals, it would seem that certainly this year, last year, we seem to be achieving about 85% of the savings across the council. And I think your record in this department is better than that. But In terms of the achievability of the savings proposals listed as Appendix 3, the one that left me a little bit nervous was the cultural ones. Maybe this is one for Maria to talk about. And it's increasing, basically it's increasing income out of museums and cultural offer. And it struck me that you would probably need more activity necessary to generate that income, and that activity would have a cost. And yet this year, if we look at the next paper, the income's actually gone down for some of those, I think. So can you give me some assurance that you think that is deliverable, please?
Yes, so we're looking at, it's not necessarily increasing activity there. For example, there's some concessions that we currently have on our tickets and museums that we're reviewing, and that's going to bring in some income. So it's reducing the cost of the service. But also we are looking at our fundraising and donations from other parts of the borough as well. So there are other options as alongside increasing the cost of some of our tickets as well. That doesn't necessarily increase the activity, but increases the income that comes in.
Just price increases, basically. Overall. Okay. Thanks very much. Well, with a gap to close, is there any expectation that we might have to reconvene to look at this further down the line before budget time with the select committee, or might that be something that goes to OSC or leadership because it's so late in the day?
I think it'd be later on. I don't think we obviously on Wednesday we'll hear more about where we are. I don't think until later Sunday we'll get final clarity, even if then. But yeah, with that gap to fill, we're going to have further discussions about savings. I think about £2 million of that they've identified kind of useful money we can consider. So it isn't quite £5 million in reality, and I think developing all the time. And the voluntary redundancy scheme was applied for. So we had more applications than we accepted because we wanted to be really clear about what we wouldn't compromise. But I need to speak from actually anyways at EMT, but my assumption is the first port of call would be revisiting those applications and anything that were objected initially due to everything.
So we've got councillors not on the committee. Mary, Chair of OSC.
I just wanted to ask a question about, there's no real mention of transformation in this. This is a very traditional set of budget savings, mostly reliant on increased income, if I'm being very simple, and no real kind of sign of all the things that we're looking for sort of in a more broad sense about improving processes, improving use of technology to cut our costs. And that may be because of the nature of some of the services, but would you accept that more needs to be done looking at it from a transformation perspective?
Possibly. I'll go back to what Councillor Hammond said earlier about our delivery of savings. I would much rather improve services, see the impact of it, and then the next year put the saving up. I'm quite a cautious person in terms of offering up savings. But in terms of transformation, we've done some really significant work in our area. So we introduced the first chatbot in the council. So if you have a parking PCN challenge, you don't speak to the person initially if you don't want to. And we have chatbot Max, and we think it's contributed to our recovery rate on PCNs going up by 2%. And that's £100,000 per percentage point. And that's been really successful. Not only has it meant that people can talk to an out of hours, it also gives direct translation and live translation. And people are now paying PCNs kind of following challenge on Saturdays and Sundays. They won't get money before. It also supports people with writing representations where they have got a case. And that means that our team are involved in back and forth. So I think that's really transformative. Across our environmental services, we use something in particular called Netcall. So we've got a new iteration of Netcall coming out. It includes AI. It's got this new kind of simple coding methodology, and we're reviewing all of our processes across the entire directorate in order to do that. On our planning system at the moment, so we're going out with tender with IT currently. They're helping us develop a new system spec that will give us a fit for purpose product for planning. We haven't got that at the moment. It's very clunky, it's very old. then. And we also introduced the new cladding portal website, which you may have seen.
Yes.
So I completely agree. We are, whilst the savings in here may not kind of tell the story, a lot of the notional FTE improvements, efficiency improvements, until you implement this, hard to see whether it's real, and you get sold a lot of kind of marketing and kind of those things. So I'd rather put them up once we know we can save than do it early. But I mean, at the moment we've got the app. The app is kind of almost up and ready to deploy. I've been going on that for ages. I think it's a real shame we haven't got one. I can't understand why. So that's kind of quite close to fruition. And then we also do a lot of work, as I said before, from inboxes and multiple touching things. And we are at the moment with our colleagues in IT introducing AI into inboxes to at least help sort and read information. So I think that's really fair comment, but we are doing a lot in the digital space.
I just think it's quite important to, if I can just come back. So I think that's great. And there's a really, really good examples and they're inspiring for the rest of the council. And they're also inspiring for our residents to know that we're doing those things to improve the service and to cut our costs. And I think it's a pity not to articulate some of that in a paper like this, because you must have aspirations going forward. You might not want to put them in the budget, but it might be worth saying that your hope further contribution to the budget will, you know, to the bottom line will come from some of the things you're trialing this year. And I think throughout the council, we need to be really sort of demonstrating to the public that we're trying all those things.
That's not something I thought of before, and that's good advice. I think.
Yes, it's not just about doing it, it's telling people you're doing it and communicating it, blowing our own trumpets, blowing your trumpets as a department as well, because there's some great stuff.
If I can add one thing to that, it's that voluntary redundancy, we are doing the same with fewer people. So that is transformational. So when we've deleted, so people who are leaving, those posts being deleted. So in food safety, we'll have 11% fewer hours, but we will deliver the same service. And that we've done that from these efficiencies and focusing more on a business transformation. So they are hidden, and
They shouldn't be hidden.
It's because we couldn't put them in here because we hadn't accepted the voluntary until last week, and so it was just wasn't quite time to get it published.
I think as a committee, we probably recommend that you do publicise these activities widely, and I would also suggest recommending that you, when necessary, consider what activities are non-essential you can stop, or non-essential when it comes to that call, as part of being brave on that. Obviously, keep us in the conversation when it comes to that stage. But I think, given the enormity of the problem you're up against, I think we have to make that recommendation tonight. Our committee colleagues who are really more about it.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing also, if I may. Also, you earlier mentioned by recycling a little bit more, you will an extra 1% or something. It will be up to it will give.
Yeah, so
generate
we
more.
think it's about £70,000. I mean, I have to get the figure confirmed, but we think it's about £70,000 per 1%.
So I was thinking that is one of the things you can advertise also quietly, more on a nudging way as opposed to in a telling.
Yeah, nudge is a good example of that behavioural change. How can we kind of support people to make those decisions? Because the cost of disposing of waste, particularly black bag waste, is much, much more than other things. Everyone just help a little bit by doing that, they can protect other services.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Thanks again for the paper. Thanks for all the work that's gone into it. I know it's an enormous amount of work, especially our finance colleagues. So thank you really to you. And I think we now need to move on to the next paper, which is the KPIs. And I don't know who's staying at the table, who's really doing climate running, who's probably excused for this bill. You're sending apologies for leaving as well, Dory. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're still quorate, but everybody else is not quorate.
My fellow councillor asked one or two like that.
Thirdly, the department's KPIs. What sort of levels are it?
I mean, it's an opportunity to blow our trumpet, and since you've so kindly asked, we should congratulate, I think, officers on the work that's taking place, and note the big achievements the council has had over the past year. We're still the only borough with high-speed bin collections. We're investing more money in cleaner streets. You can see here under Greener, we've completed retrofits of 6 schools and some of our operational buildings, which over time should bring bills down too. We've surpassed our tree planting target, 500 trees against a target of 400 over the course of the entire electoral term. We have another year to go, hopefully 4 more after this too. We have continued with amazing spaces. Sloane Street is probably the best shopping destination in Europe, if not the world. Even more so now after the project that we completed in partnership with Cadogan. Even in your ward, Chair, there are amazing spaces underway. Gloucester Road South is being built right now. Pretty much every street in Wallace Ward is an amazing space. We're working with Councillor Mackover on Gloucester Road North. You could go almost anywhere in this paper and find fantastic things that are happening. There's more recycling than there was 10, 20, 30 years ago in this borough. We're building a new park in Laura's ward, for goodness sake. I mean, if that's not a reason to keep KNC Conservative on the 7th of May, then I don't know what is. Working through here, safer, we have reduced average speeds on some of our most dangerous roads, which is very good news, and there are speed indicators devices and junction improvements. I'm aware of some in Portfield, Chair, so that's good news over the past year or so. I'm working through this, I think, in terms of fairness. There's some fantastic stuff happening. We're going into planning in the next month or two on a scheme to potentially deliver 65 new extra care units. That's part of our house building programme with more than 100 affordable homes set to be complete by the end of the financial year, which would be a big achievement for this council. I would encourage this to be posted for every letterbox in the borough. I think everybody should know what a good job in so very many areas this council is doing.
Well, thank you, John. There's a good party political broadcast there as well. But
yeah,
I
think
throw
we
it back
should
now
up
to the,
and get it out to every Instagram, TikTok, Facebook user in the borough. And to make sure that they know, and a postal vote form too for any of them who might be away on the big day.
Naturally, and I'm sure my colleagues who attended the committee tonight will agree with some of those points, but I think we now need to start.
The key point here is that you would agree because you've come here and you've read the paper.
So I think you made your point there, Johnny, very effectively. but I do need now to give the officers a chance, because of course this isn't just about party political leadership, it's also about how well they manage the service generally. Bo, here's your KPIs that you work on with your team in a non-party political way. What's your introduction to this paper then?
So I think that broadly performance is good, but then again we do invest quite in services. So as we said before, we do have plastic waste collections, and we do have a very good street cleansing service. So we invest well, we get good outcomes. Not here, but we've recently done a resident survey, so the indications are very positive. But there are areas where we have either national targets, such as our housing completions target, that we obviously need to do better on. And we saw that improvement in Kensal recently. And there are areas such as recycling, which we talked about in detail today, where actually we're kind of below where we want to be as a council, whilst we still have improved. And then in terms of our kind of highways area and kind of air quality, there's question around air quality that you may have ran through there as well. But broadly, performance is good. Residents are pleased with the service. The things that we know kind of people make contact with us the most about the quality of our highways, waste collections, clean streets, all went well. But there are areas that we need to work on, for example, housing completions, air quality, recycling particularly. But yeah, it's been an unwieldy paper, so I do apologise, but it's just the way we conduct our KPIs, and we use a dashboard, so it's hard to put this into a kind of nice neat word area. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thanks. I did ask for a paper that had the minimum amount of work in it, because I know this is your product that you use. Will you tell me how often you look at this product and how you use it?
So
Yeah, we'll start with that one.
So our departmental management team meetings, we have a monthly one that's focused on performance. So we have a dashboard and we go through all red and amber, or ones that are kind of trending downwards, and then the service manager comes in and they explain what's happening. And sometimes it's a seasonal issue. Sometimes it's around wider kind of issues within the economy or within the supply chains. But they're asked to come in and talk to us about that. So that's on a monthly basis. They're also using people's kind of performance setting. So everyone has an annual appraisal, and they have objectives set. And whether it's delivering capital projects or performance, then they will have a performance element built into their kind of annual year review, annual appraisal. And then also the council has its corporate plan. So we have a council action plan, and we have areas that we have to kind of deliver there. And that goes regularly to overview and scrutiny, goes to leadership team, goes to JLT, goes to various council meetings. So there is a focus on.
And I asked for a non-bespoke product for the committee. So you're looking at this roughly monthly then?
Yes, it's not live, so it's always live. So at any time, if I get an issue, a complaint from a councillor, and we go, oh, actually, that doesn't feel right. Let's just check there's not a wider issue. I can click in at any time and I can see reams of information around FPN's issue, payment. It's incredible, really. But in terms of when we sit down as a clear decision point and go through it, and get advice and updates or take action against ones that aren't performing, that meeting takes place monthly.
And how are the individual line items chosen for inclusion? Yeah.
So some of them are statutory indicators. So we have less now. So some time ago, areas aren't kind of reported nationally, but there are some areas that we do have to report nationally. We choose things that we think reflect services we offer, what people are interested in, or areas that councillors have identified as areas they want to either improve or change as part of the council plan.
Come back to that in a moment, but I'm going to do the committee. I'll go the other way this time. Laura first.
Thank you very much. Okay, yes, great. I like all the good news stories in the report. It's great. I do have a few questions though. One is how can we reduce contamination in recycling? I know, I know previously we've discussed it a bit, and it's, we put out some paperwork, but it still keeps happening. So it's actually an ongoing problem. So how can we do that? And then a follow on from that, still sticking with rubbish food waste, how can we get the 12% in the report that don't have any space to put their food waste box, or whatever it's called? How can we sort them out as well? But those are kind of two good things, and then I've got another one.
So reducing contamination, a lot of it is around kind of how we work with our behaviour change and door knockers. So we have a team that do door knocking within the waste service. They go through the contamination. So if a vehicle's got a contaminated load when it fits on board, we'll know where that's roughly been that day. So we can try and understand where it is. But a lot of it is down to education, engagement. And we do have areas where there's bulk waste collections where you see more contamination. So as a rule of thumb, contamination's less in single properties than it is in flat blocks, just because often it gets commingled with cumulative. And generally, people who are further away from their rubbish being presented into bulk bins, you don't see the improved behaviour. But part of it as well is working with managing agents to get information out as well. But yeah, we do have a team who do that. That's about education.
Sorry, with engagement on that, do you notice a decline? Or because I could imagine some people are just like, yeah, whatever, and they just carry on. Or does it have a real?
We do, and there's also a case. I mean, ultimately, we can look at enforcement, so we don't tend to look at that where people intentionally kind of dump in the wrong bin. Then that hasn't been unknown, or where people who sometimes dump waste in textile bins, for example. We do take action, and we always look to start through obviously engagement first. I actually think we need to set a new waste strategy. But the borough doesn't have a waste strategy. They actually have a really detailed composition analysis of all our bins, saying what should be in each stream. And that's something that we've been kind of working on. WRWA, who West Yorkshire Waste Authority, they've reached their strategy. We need to go away and come back to you with a really invigorated approach to that. Because as you said before, the savings that are out there, plus the kind of benefits to the environment, are massive. So we do, and I recognise that, needs to do a better job of providing a coherent message to our residents. Because it is residents who dispose of the waste, but we could be doing more to kind of guide and support them. In terms of food waste, so we have rolled out food waste, I think around a third of the borough, but it's going to be a national requirement that we have to offer every house who wishes it have a food waste collection by the end of next year, and we're working to do that. We don't have kind of on-street food waste collection bins. That's a decision, and we think that clutter leads to other problems. So we're trying to avoid that. But the simple answer is small caddies in kitchens for people, which help out percent. But in a borough like Kensington and Chelsea, a lot of percentage figures we have for cycling, I won't say issues, they're challenges, are because of the makeup of the borough wasn't designed for the current cycling system, 3 bins, for example. So we hope by introducing small caddies, but at the same time, we're not at the moment prepared to compromise on street clutter and creating more issues in the borough. But we do need to work with managed agents in bin stores on our own housing estates to improve segregation of waste through whether that's through better signage or through letter drops, or sometimes as simple as separating out the access and things and changing the colour of the bins so people can really see the right thing. Because most people don't intentionally do this stuff.
I have a couple more. So yes, the retrofit in climate, you I think it was 6 schools have been done already. And you have a target of 32 schools and 16 buildings by 2030. How's that going?
So the honest answer is we're not going to meet that target.
Okay.
The cost of retrofits, the council revised position, plus the fact that government are going to reduce SADC funding from next year, we understand, means that's quite difficult. That's one that will come back onto the council. The current financial reality, and Johnny will have may provide an update on kind of fiscal priorities. But at the moment, our key priority is around maintaining service delivery. Where there's an investor save bid, so we know our corporate buildings, we're rolling out retrofit. But in schools that aren't council controlled schools, that's not something that we're prioritising at the moment. And we also know that with Fabric First, it's only worth investing in retrofit of heating and stuff where they've got the right kind of glazing and kind of fabric conditioners that mean it's effective. Brendan, do you want to say any more about retrofit?
No, I think that covers it fairly well. I mean, it's a good thing to do, and if we have the means to do it, I would like us to be able to do it more. And it does have the potential over time to reduce bills in some of our buildings. But yeah, given the financial climate and the likelihood of reduced government funding, it won't be feasible to cover all. I mean, that set of figures that you've indicated is our entire kind of school estate and our kind of main operation buildings.
Yeah.
So were we to cover that would be a really big achievement. Obviously, we'd love to, but from where we are today, that looks really difficult.
So it's 8 is the figure so far. Will there be any more? Are there any actually it's going to be added, or is it?
Yeah, so we're looking at 2 for next year. One of those is in discussion at the moment. So yeah, we are in discussion about the next programme. That target was great. It's really aspirational. Yeah. Things have changed so much since that was set kind of a few years back that unfortunately I don't believe it's something that we can hope to meet at those.
Fine, and just one more, I'll move on. Okay, so what KPIs do you think are sort of most at risk? Because there's some ambers and greens, but what do you think is the highest risk for the end of the year that you've missed the target?
Well, I think it's almost so. Housing delivery, for example, is a nationally set indicator. We can all discuss for a long time about how fair the figure is, but figure is the figure. So quite clearly, we're not going to meet that target, and that obviously impacts on our kind of planning committee and the decisions they have to take. But we are moving in the right direction. We've had Kensal went to committee and was approved. And we expect to see 2 developments come in December as well, which will provide housing supply in the borough. But yeah, that's an area that concerns me. We keep talking about recycling because that's another area that does. We'll just quickly go through. I think on air quality, Andrew, there was one as well, which was a bit concerning before.
Yeah, so air quality, we're affected a lot by wider climate. So it's a more regional. So we did very well last year, but the early signs this year is that air quality's got worse again. And so we're establishing why that is and whether there's something we can do to help. And the other one, which Bo hasn't mentioned, is road safety.
Yeah.
It still hasn't, we're still not seeing an improvement. So that's a third, we're likely to see no improvement in 2025. So it's something we again need to work harder at next year.
And we commissioned an independent review on road safety.
We have.
To understand how we can improve people walking in the borough and how we can support them.
How long will that review sort of take to get?
So I think the initial stats have been concluded. I haven't seen the draft.
Yeah, I've not seen it. So the work's completed, but we haven't had the report from the consultant.
We've worked with the TfL and we have got the LIP, and that gives not a huge amount, but some money towards road safety schemes. And as part of the Amazing Spaces schemes and the other work we do in the borough, safety as well as aesthetics is a key part of the area we look at. And you can see areas like widening pavements, reducing speeds, and that is a key part of those schemes as well.
We will consider road safety in our March meeting.
Yes.
We did last year.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Following on from that, I was going to ask, has 20 mile an hour done any, have changed anything at all in driving behaviour?
I'll let Andrew's the expert.
So in terms of collisions, no, it's made no material difference. But it's easy in a borough-wide figure. But there are areas where we have significantly lowered speeds. So the speeds have got lower, but the road safety, we haven't seen the level of improvement we had expected when we agreed to drop the speed limit.
Okay. My other question is, I'm of the belief that low mileage actually contributes to pollution. Has that been proved correct or incorrect?
So again, there's no correlation that's been shown. There's an association that when we dropped the speed limit, the air quality got better. But there's so many other things that contributed to better air quality. You can't say that the lower speed limit. But because we don't have any road humps, so we haven't got the accelerating, slowing down, so the educated assumption is that our road network, our 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, has much less effect on air pollution than it would be if we have the road covered in road humps. So I think we've got the best of both worlds. We've got lower speed without the air pollution.
Okay. I see that. My next question is about biodiversity, and we have a target at about 80%. Is that a target that we are aiming for, or is that a target we will get to? If you see what I'm saying, is it an aspirational thing, or is it a something set?
So yes, the target we should be hitting. I believe it is aspirational. Biodiversity net gain is a national legislative framework. I haven't got all the information on that one, but 75% against 80, it's not that far off. But I'll come back to more detail on that one.
My next question is about the housing, and you alluded to that earlier. Once Kensal is built and once Airsport is built, we practically have no land left to build on. So what are we going to do, and how are we going to respond to the government who will continuously want us to build, I don't know where? What is our attitude going to be? Are we going to continuously apologize for not having enough land and not building enough houses? Or are we going to stand our ground and say, this is what we have, this is what we can offer?
Our local plan sets out what we believe our house capacity to be. So as a council, our position will always be based on what we can provide in the local plan. And that will be our clear back to the GLA in London and all national government. I think all of us in this room believe the targets we're being given and ones that we allude to aren't achievable. We do have a part to play in London housing delivery. There is a risk to us not engaging in that in terms of big developments, because the GLA will determine on our behalf. I think what I'm most kind of keen to do is to make sure we provide good quality housing, this is a good standard, that we get all the Section 106 and the benefits that we want for as well. So things, poor quality developments, also developments that aren't just housing alone, that they're mixed use developments that are really rich with retail offer, leisure facilities, commercial. What we don't want is, for example, Kensal could have just been loads of houses. So I'm keen to make sure we do deliver in an appropriate way that suits our borough. It looks like it should be in our borough in terms of the aesthetic,
Exactly.
but also is the quality mixed use development. But in terms of the actual number, all we can deliver is in our local plan. Our local plan's evidence led, and that will be pushing back to with the GLA and government and what we can deliver. How far that will go, I don't know. But our response can only be what we've come to as part of the local plan. Do you give your view on that?
I mean, obviously these sites that you're talking about are of a completely different quantum of anything that we're going to have in the borough for the next 20, 30, 50 years. They'll probably take quite a bit of time to build out if they get permission. So actually, in terms of kind of housing delivery, it will cover quite a few of the next few years. So to some extent, this will really be a question for us if we're still here in 5 or 10 years' time, or for successors. But I think, you hit a really good point. Some of the targets that the Labour government has set us and the Labour City Hall are not right for this borough. They don't understand this borough. We've shown in the past that where we think something doesn't work for KNC, we will fight for the best deal for residents in KNC. So you look at sites like South Ken Station, we've been really unapologetic about the high quality of design they should have, and about delivery of full step-free access. You look previously at stuff like the Holiday Inn, the Forum Hotel. There have been sites over the past 5 or 10 years where this council has stood up for its residents. So I think we've got to be prepared to do that again in the future. It's got to be site by site. If there's a site that can accommodate new homes in a way that meets the needs of our community, that's great. And we are open to development and to playing our full part in London, and on the global stage, given this borough's global profile, to be the best of London and of the UK. We really should be the front door for this country, to talent and innovation and ideas and to development as well. But if it's of a scale that doesn't work for this borough, then we have to take a stand. So it's going to be guided by that. But yeah, I mean, these sites are of a different order of magnitude to almost anything else we're likely to see over the next generation.
And my final question is not mine, it's actually Dory's. He wants to know about museum revenue. Yeah, that's.
So what exactly would you like to know about?
He wants to know where is the revenue here in this table.
So it's under 4.7. There's
Yeah.
2 sets. So there's museums income,
Yeah.
admissions income, and venue hire revenue. And then, sorry, if you see the table below 4.7.
Yeah, I see, because there is income from events management, right?
There's income from events management. If you move further up on the table,
Yeah,
2, 3, and 4, museums admissions income, museums venue hire income,
so this
and museums retail income. That's museums income.
that's it. Okay, because I was under the understanding museums are free.
They are free, but we do have a shop
Oh,
where we sell goods,
okay,
and we also hire out the venue. So we have weddings and
yeah,
we,
but you have
Well,
your
yeah.
admission.
admissions. Yes, we do have ticketed exhibitions. So
Okay.
to enter, there's a general exhibition and there's ticketed exhibitions.
Okay, thank you. Oh, he piqued my interest too. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, yes, I would be slightly worried about putting this through some of my residents' doors, because they tend to look quite closely at KPIs, and I'll do the same this evening, but I haven't got all night in order for you to go through as much detail as I just take this as just indicative. When something shows a huge lot of green, it sometimes indicates to me that it's perfect, and sometimes indicates to me that the target is too easy. So if I look at PM 131, percentage of minor planning applications, this is page 44 back. percentage of my planning applications completed within the statutory timeframe, and someone set the target of 70%, I would say that should be 100%. Why wouldn't we make all planning applications done within the statutory timeframe? So where does the 70% come from? Who has set 70 as the target?
I assume it's a historic target. I think for that when that was set. I think you're right. We're hitting kind of high numbers now. The only time where we have issues is, to be honest with you, it's really hard to recruit retain planning staff.
Yeah, no, this is pure.
I think some of the targets are statutory.
Yeah, but
I think some,
that's why I'm asking.
I think some of that is, I think that might be statutory.
But we don't have to. Are we measuring ourselves against our own plans? Because if we think it's all green, we're doing terribly well, and what our residents have. But if I ask a resident, if residents say to me, why are 3 out of 10 planning applications missing the deadline, and we say, well, we're satisfied by that because that's the national target. But I think that's one to check, for example. And it's on those themes. Now, if I look on page, I know, take page 11, there's lots of things on here. If I looked at PM 106, page 47, which is also page 11, number of parks with green flag status. So the first column is NA, and then it's update not available, and then it's NA, and then it's annual. Again, I'm not asking for answers on all these. I'm thinking this, to me, this page, looking at it, which is full of NAs and NAs and NAs and a few colours, could be refined and brought up to date as a really meaningful KPI. Because if I sat down with my teams in the jobs that I've done, and I went through line by line, I wouldn't know how to actually judge whether people are.
So
are being strict.
we don't use this. What's happened is someone has tried to Frankenstein this into a format for this report. So green flags is a great example. One of the columns there is update last quarter. It's NA because it's an annual award, the green flag is. So it doesn't neatly fit into the way we're trying to put the figures into here. I do agree. And sometimes at NA because it wasn't, it's a new target we set this year. So
that's what I think. So this is, it's the right thing to do. Try and pull the data together. But I would ask that someone in your team who's very good at management reporting actually pulls this through a system. I give you more, for example.
We have I'd love to show our system. It's very different to this. It's exceptional.
Yeah.
It's web based. You went through with an age. You're just
just to give you an example, because once it's in front of us, then our job is to say, is this the best we can do? So I'm very pleased that we're green on number of food businesses inspected and visited. The number is 271, but it's green, but it's being judged against what? Because there must be, I know, 10,000 food businesses. Is 271 visited out of 10,000, 20,000? Is that green? Not expecting answers. I'm just saying, giving you the idea of how someone should put it together for next time. Or here's another one. I know we just started doing private rental homes from on the licensing, but PM 101, number of private rental homes where hazards have been rectified following enforcement, 7, and that's the whole borough. That seems like a low number, but it's amber, so it's not red. But again, what is it judged against? So that's why I'd be cautious about putting this through all of my residents, because their view is on all sorts of things. They're saying, I'm not sure that we're moving fast enough in transforming, which is our theme. However many web-based or other sort of AI systems we've got, because it's still good old-fashioned street enforcement, but people will not see these figures as indicating everything's being done right. And we talked, I think, a lot of us about managing agents and could they be used to help enforce where residents are just not being very good at their bin management. And I've asked for several years, I've seen some quite lengthy letters which say from officers, yes, we think there are powers, we're looking into it. The question is, how does looking into actually translate into action? And that's what I would be using management information and KPI to say, where there is progress that will help us hit higher figures and get greater customer satisfaction. Is this picking up where we're not moving forward fast enough on them? So it's it's a helpful bit of scrutiny, I think, to say what you produce for us and what we would want to give to our residents has got to be meaningful. So there's a lot in here which raises questions, but it's good to see that a number of things are being looked at.
So the things you would see as councillors wouldn't be in the appendix. That's just our kind of quarterly internal monitoring.
That's what I mean. But if you're internally monitoring this, then someone should be picking up and saying, what would this look like? It's not secret. What would this look like if residents did pick it up and put it in the newspaper saying?
So we don't look at this one, but the things you would see are the ones in the main body of the report. They're the ones that publicly reported. I take a point though about.
I mean, here's that number of visits to leisure centre, 284,811. That's a very good number. What's it being compared with?
If you look at it year on year,
Yeah.
if you looked at the graph, it would show you if it's in parallel times, and you can't really quarterly monitor it because there's a big difference in leisure centre admissions by seasonality. So in the summer, people don't tend to go as much, but January is really high. So in February, you could always drop this month when actually January everyone has new admissions.
I'm sure there's but what I'm saying that this is a really useful thing. I'm sure there's detailed discussion behind each item, but where it says where it's produced as something that we can all learn from and pick things to improve on, then I think that someone in your team can rigorously analyse this and say this is a really useful, because I think you've got the point here, which is if you put it in front of us, we'll hope to learn something from it.
Of course, I think what I'd like to do is what we really should bring back here is the resident satisfaction figures. So
That's very useful to see.
that's been concluded now. So it wasn't available at this point, but I think if you ask for it as members, that would be a really good measure of what residents view around service quality and outcome. But your points around how they're presented are taken and they're well made. So maybe that's something that the committee wants to see.
No, I have no more questions.
Well, I mean, I had a pretty similar set of questions, although I haven't written them down. It's just that Sam's articulating my point. There's a very great difference between the tables that are start on page 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44. So what we've got on pages 46, 47, and 48, and then similarly in the cultural ones. But I wasn't really sure with page 46, 47 what I was looking at here, because we've got some, just take a random example, 4 up from the bottom on page 46, missed bin collections. You've got a target, i.e. less than 0.5%. You're meeting the target comfortably, and that's green. That to me is a really good example of a metric that's being, and it's one that's being met. And then Sam has brought up some others where we're not sure about. So the bottom of page 47, noise complaints responded to within the target timescale. Well, 74, but we don't know what target time. I mean, in fact, if there is a target timescale, that's good, but we don't know what it is, and you don't know whether it's green. You don't know whether it's doable.
Percentage, not a number. I agree.
It's good or not. But then there's others here, like about 7 or 8 above, number of parking suspensions, PM 113. I mean, it's a fact that there were 3,394, but if nobody did any work, there wouldn't be any parking suspension. So how can you say whether that's good or bad? Because it's dependent entirely on the third party. It's not accounted for.
So on that point, we have budget targets. So if you look at the kind of how it tracks over the year, and we need to know that it's a certain amount to meet our budget outturn target.
Yes, so some of these are for our monitoring to understand, because we employ X people to do parking suspensions. If we saw it was increasing by 20%, we know so a lot of this is our service level monitoring, and it doesn't perhaps make sense to you because you can't see the last year or the last 3 years. So it's because of the way the data is presented. Much of this data on 46, 47, such as the number of private rental homes, which you pointed out, only 7 homes were improved following enforcement. It's amber because we wanted it to be higher than that. So it's my monitoring, as in I want to know what it is our 7 members of staff, what they're getting out of, how the residents are benefiting from those staff doing HMO or enforcement of
because that sorry, no, if you've got 7 members of staff and there are 7 homes improved, that doesn't look like very.
And that's why, absolutely, and that's why that team is being redesigned, because we know we need to get better we need to get more out of that team.
I mean, there's lots of that kind of discussion. One could have a number of B superhighway sites, which obviously they're great, and the Deference Wallens champion is for 7 years and more. But is 2 a good number? Is it meant to be 2 per year, or is 2 per year a good thing, or should it actually be 6 per year, or when do we set the benchmark? So there's lots of these that don't really look like KPIs to me. I mean, some of them do. And the first example,
Because they're not KPIs, a lot of it is just service monitoring information. Our KPIs are in the main body.
yeah.
On reflection, we probably shouldn't have put these in the back. We try to give you a flavour of the stuff we monitor.
Yes.
No, I think it's brilliant that you did them because there's so much more that you're doing. It's just a question of how it pulls together and how
Yeah.
you can find this most
That's
useful
really
result.
good feedback.
And there's so much more that isn't here. So
Yeah.
each team, so I've got 21 teams. Each of those have about 20. So with their performance measured. So there's 400 there just in my.
There's not even a comprehensive.
Yes, so it's a
snapshot. It's a random snapshot of some, or maybe not random, but it's a snapshot of some of the things that you do as a team.
Good thing we're not asking for all 400.
Yes.
And then in the cultural one, just so Moira doesn't escape, the number of council grants given out per year, well, that's a KPI environment. But I mean,
Yes.
there isn't a target.
There
You've
is a
done
big-
15, well, at least it says NA to the target.
Yes.
You've done 15, and that's apparently green.
Yes, it will, I suppose to a certain extent it will always be green because there isn't targets against it. It depends on the number of applications we get through and whether they, meet the criteria for funding. But it is, I suppose it's about it being a good number, and it's a diverse number of events and projects that we're funding. But yes, it will always be green.
You could look at it the other way around, that we're in such dire financial straits, still giving out 15 is a bad thing, and we should stop altogether. But I mean, I'm not making that argument, but it's just another way of looking at it. That clearly there's benefit to doing 15, but
We do.
how do you judge it? That's the question. And I think I'll probably leave it at that point and ask Mary, who's councillor
Nothing
not
for
in the
me, thank
committee,
you.
doesn't want to follow on. All right, well, fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much for coming in, all of you, for the paper. And I mean, I hope that wasn't too much extra work to prepare it, because you
No, I just think on reflection, probably your feedback, we think about how we do something that's more operational in a better format, because all the points we've made are really kind of valid.
Yes, well, perhaps next year when because I think we need to do this as an annual. Mary is the chair of the LC, is very keen on the KPIs appearing before the committees. We'll do it again, but I don't want too much of a bespoke product, but I want something that actually we can have a couple of questions about as we've done. Well, thank you very much indeed, Johnny, Bo, and Julie Moore staying. We move on to item 6. Which is the work programme, and Sam, I think we've got an update.
Yeah, I have we've had some useful meetings with a lot of very serious and heavy amounts of work by officers that pulled together these themes on possible reviews of the local plan. And it's impossible to do this in a bigger group because it takes quite a lot of time to go through in great detail. But I want to report a bit more, there are not many of us here, because the contamination this presentation that we were made was so interesting that I think, although I can't decide it, that it's something that this committee can suggest that it's offered to councillors, because every single page that people who were in that room stopped and wanted to know. For example, 20% of all land in KSE is contaminated was useful for us to know, and the fact that no other borough is using planning system to try and improve some of these environmental health targets, and that has set up, shall we say, some concern in the planning department that they're being used for something which isn't planning but for environmental health. And it turned out that actually there had not been a meeting of planning officers, development control officers, and environmental health. They had both been concerned about how it is, but they never actually got together. So one of the actions that we suggested in the meeting was that they must get together and come up with sort of a refined view of it. But the actual presentation on content, for example, the national lead concentration standard is 200, but actually the average lead concentration in this borough is so high that it has been decided that 436 of its measure is what we should be applying in KNC. So it was news to me that we're accepting 400, more than twice the national limit as our lead content here. So all of this is fascinating because all of us are either in gardens or parks or wandering along, and all of our residents are as well. So how much of this should be sort of brought into policy, and how should planning be used to control it? So that was one that might go wider than the committee. We did talk at the last meeting about business area policies and the draft guidance that officers will work on to make it better. Hotel policy, no one's actually asking at the moment to take hotels away, but should the policy change? Well, if no one's asking, certainly the policy is too tight, we're not bothering to ask. Roof extensions, that's more in national NPPF, and that goes further than our local plan. Parking policy, again, there's a question of whether we're being too tight given the numbers of parking permits are falling. Now the big question for us is, do we just tell officers to write it up with us and publish it and that's it? Or do we now put it out to a call for evidence from residents associations who are very keen to feed in on some of this before we move to the final report?
I think if we've got time, I think we ought to hear from the residents associations.
Yeah, they wanted to be on it, but I think
I don't think we can have them as members of the committee, but I think they're very keen to give us their views, and I think they should be reflected, so they should have an opportunity to do that.
So that's to our governance team to find a way of asking the questions that could feed into what will be our final report, rather than asking them to come up with all of new questions.
I mean, you could have a public meeting on it, and the RAs could. That might be a way of doing it, or you could do
some kind of questionnaires.
Yeah,
I think it would be easier.
It's called written evidence.
My instinct would be call for written, because to have the whole discussion and then not be able to move forward without writing another report. I think let's see what they have to say on the topics. Let's see how that fits in without saying what we think the direction should be.
Yes.
Because otherwise we're leading them or they're leading us. So let's let them have to say we'd welcome to hear from them on the topics that we set out in the briefing paper for that report.
And that's your recommendation.
Yes, that would be
That's nods all round. So
well, we're happy to set the call for evidence.
Okay.
Open it to resident associations, local community societies, and give them a sufficient window of opportunity to make written formal responses.
I don't think you should. I mean, you can tell residents associations it's there, but I think it needs to be a call for evidence to everybody. We get residents associations who are self-selecting groups of people. So it needs to be to all residents, and if the resident associations happen to see it, that's great.
Yeah.
They can respond, because I'm sure they will. They're organised, and Michael Bark, Sally, for example, will be all over this, and we want to write something. But
And is it going to be a questionnaire where they have like multiple choice questions, or is it going to be they're going to write essays? Because that's also you have to be very careful. You don't just.
As a suggestion, we've done a call for evidence in the past. We've done a series of structured questions based on a particular review.
Okay.
So it's quite structured, and then we ask people to give their views about those particular questions.
And particularly where it would be most helpful for officers who have to turn this into policy refinement or clarification. Let's get the evidence that actually is in the most useful form for officers, rather than a huge discussion that then needs to be regurgitated on that.
And I think we would look to structure it along the 8 policies for local government that we're reviewed.
Yes, it has to be on point.
But I would say where we have decided that there isn't any that we can take the information is there, we don't put that out for consultation, because that's asking for something that we've decided not that there isn't any change that we think could be happening. So it's only on the active areas.
Yeah, so you can, but don't lead the residents with
with their views, what we think it's about.
So, for example, on amalgamations, which was something that was raised, it's quickly decided in the subcommittee that, the working group, that there wouldn't be a sufficient bar in evidence to change the amalgamation policy, and therefore we didn't take that one forward. And therefore, there's no point in going out to residents winding, or residents and resident association, alarming them that there's about to be a change, to say that's not taken forward.
Yeah, well, I think if we take that approach, then we could make it clear in the call for evidence, the areas in which we're.
That's the better thing.
Submission
Yeah.
review.
So these are the ones where
And always where we can strike out that the.
Yes, because otherwise they'll write masses on amalgamation.
Yes.
And then turn out, well, the working group already decided they're not going to do anything with it. Yeah. So they'll be covered. Good, thank you very much.
And subject to that, you'll be on track to deliver a report for all of the January meetings, it's early February, early February.
Well, question will be how quickly residents associations can fairly respond. It's late in the year now.
Yes.
If we ask them to bring something back by late Jan, then
Don't have enough time to turn it around for February. Well, it
Yeah.
depends how much time you give them.
I would say whatever is.
Jan, maybe, if you
Leave
can
the
get
time,
something.
leave the timetable to you to
Yeah.
discuss. with Jane.
We'll come up with some official time scales and so.
See what you think.
Yeah,
But we are up
Meet
against
against us, but
we are up against a hard deadline with an election now, so that
Yes.
that does limit us to where we're going to respond. It's not as if we can carry it forward to the next council year because none of us might be here, so we do actually need to.
Okay.
Need to
well, maybe they can limit the comments.
yes.
So because we're all on the deadline here. Yeah.
Okay.
A good point.
Any other business from anybody? I'm not minded to take any, but that's it. We'll close the meeting at that point. Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Tell me.